Basically, virtual reality brings in simulation. What do we mean by simulation? It creates a kind of computer generated graphics. Simulation can be a computer generated graphics where the user can get interactive. The user can get interactive, or it can get integrated with the user also, right? A computer generated graphic. Simulation can be a computer generated graphic which is being created, a graphic experience that can be similar or completely different from the real world, right? We can simply create images of the real world and bring it to a graphic surface, or bring it to a graphic interface, and then project that to the user. Project that to the user in such a way that user gets completely immersed. User get completely immersed, or it remains in immersion. Immersion would means it gets completely integrated with that particular surrounding which is being created, or that particular artificial surrounding which is being created. So an artificial surrounding which is projected in the form of graphics, which helps to integrate the user, is termed as virtual reality. In practice, virtual reality is something where we have a head mounted display over which there could be a display, and the display is such that the user finds itself to be the integral part of what is being displayed, right? But in virtual reality, the user can never participate. The user can never participate. It can remain integrated to the virtual things, to the graphical things, to the computer generated things, but it never gets integrated, or it is never projected. It is only an observer of the graphics which are being created. So a realistic projection of graphics, or realistic projection of virtual things, is called as virtual reality, right? A realistic projection of virtual objects is called as virtual reality, where everything remains virtual. This all is a part of virtual reality continuum itself, right? When we look up to this, then there are three parts of virtual reality continuum that we can understand. And these parts of virtual reality continuum precisely when we can look up to, and this is the virtuality continuum, right? Now when we try to identify the virtuality continuum, if we create images, then if this is the realistic surrounding which is being created, this is reality, right? And if this can all be brought into a graphical representation, this becomes virtual reality. If this can all be brought into the graphical representation, this becomes virtual reality. There are more related concepts to virtual reality. Reality and virtual reality are two different things. This is reality, this is virtuality. Everything is in computer. Everything is physical over here. Now, when the reality and the virtuality, they start getting mixed up. They start getting mixed up that in such a way that the real things are also, or the virtual things are also projected in the physical surroundings, then it becomes augmented reality. Also, when the virtual things or the realistic things and virtual things start to interact, it becomes augmented virtuality, right? It becomes augmented virtuality. This all is being termed as virtuality continuum, or what is also called as mixed reality. That these all terms we will see. The first aspect of it is we have the realistic thing, physical things, right? Everything. This is the physical thing, or this pen is the physical thing, that paper is a physical thing, right? These all can be the physical things that we have. Now when the physical things are simulated, are turned into a graphical representation, that becomes virtuality, right? We take a snapshot of it, we take an image of it, and we try to display everything on a graphical plane, on a graphical platform. That becomes virtuality. Now when, as and how this virtual and real things start getting mixed up, we create more things where we have virtual reality, we have augmented reality, we have mixed reality, we have augmented virtuality also, right? So all of these. So virtuality, or a sense of virtuality which is being created, a sense of virtuality of realistic things which is being created, is called as virtual reality, right? Virtual reality can be of various types. that we can understand. This is just a graphical representation of the things, and when graphical representation of the things can be brought into, the things can be taken up, or the virtual things can be easily understood or can easily be projected also, right? When we look up to the virtual reality, there are three types of virtual reality. The first one of the virtual reality is non-immersive virtual reality, where screen-based virtual reality is being created, right? Non-immersive, right? The user does not remains immersed to the to this type of the virtual reality. The user is just an integral part of it, right? Non-immersive virtual reality provides a computer-generated environment only, but allows the user to stay aware of the surrounding, whatever is going on, right? Like for example, we are watching something over a particular TV or over a particular monitor, and they looks like quite real, but we understand that this is virtual and this is real. There is a feeling of virtuality and reality, or there is a distinction between virtuality and reality that becomes non-immersive. The user is not completely immersed, or user is not completely integrated with the virtual reality. Right, various types of the computer-aided design tools, systems, etc. They are all non-immersive. These type of the systems, they are mostly used in automation. They are also used in industrial applications. Right, where designing, manufacturing patterns, all of this they can be understood with an interaction with the real world also, right? Or with a feeling of real world also. Then there are semi-immersive virtual reality, which are those, it provides a partial virtual environment where the user's perception of being different from the reality is generated, right? The user is integrated to the virtual things in such a way that virtual things are projected in much more realistic way to the user itself, right? That becomes semi-immersive. That means partially it is in the virtual environment, partially it is in the real environment also. Or using the virtual graphics, we generate a feeling of depth in the object. We generate a feeling of depth in the object. So the user finds itself into a particular point, that user understand that this is the surrounding, and in this surrounding there are certain virtual things which are being projected, which looks like quite real, that becomes semi-immersive. So a virtual reality depth is being created in such type of the scenario. Virtual reality depth, we would mean that the user looks up to the surrounding over here. The user looks up to the surrounding. If this is the user, right, it looks up to the surrounding. It has a feeling of the surrounding, and in the surrounding itself, there are certain objects, there are certain graphical things where the three-dimensional aspects of the things can be understood, or they can be perceived, or a virtual depth is being perceived for any object which is being projected, right? It looks like, usually we go for 3D animation or we go for 3D movies. They are basically semi-immersive virtual realities, right? Semi-immersive virtual reality. And then the third one is fully immersive virtual reality. The fully immersive virtual realities are those where we utilize the virtual reality, or we integrate the user and the virtual graphic representation or projection all together in such a way that the user finds itself to be the integral part of the virtual surrounding, right? Just as an observer only, but there is no feeling of the anything surrounding us. The only feeling of the surrounding is generated by the graphics only. We do not understand, or we do not perceive the real world surrounding. We only perceive the graphical surrounding, right? That becomes fully immersive or immersive virtual reality. The user is completely immersed. So fully immersive, user is completely immersed. Semi-immersive, where the three-dimensional objects are being displayed using virtual graphics, so that in the physical continuum itself there could be virtual depth which are also being created, and user have a sense of the surrounding as well as the depth of the object which is virtually being placed. And third one is the non-immersive one, where user can distinguish clearly between the projected things and the real world surrounding. These two can remain different, right? So that these are three types of the virtual reality which are being created. In the case of immersive virtual reality, there are multiple devices which are being used, and the foremost device which is being used in virtual reality is the virtual reality headset. We utilize a headset on which the graphics can be displayed. That headset helps to create a virtual surrounding for the user, right? These type of the head mounted display which are being created, and these head mounted display can have various optical mirrors which are being placed, or a silver coating which is being placed inside, so it becomes all reflective, and the user finds light coming from all the direction, right? From all the direction of its viewing angle. If this is the viewing angle, then light would immerse, light would come in from all the direction. So user does not get a sense of light outside what is being projected, right? Does not get a light from the outside sources. All the light which is being perceived by the user across all the angles would be from the graphics representation only. So this becomes a kind of immersive display, right? There is also this can be the head mount, which is one of the device. Then there could be perception devices which are also being created in VR perception devices or immersive perception devices, where three-dimensional displays can be created, or the surround sound, acoustic, etc. Right? Apart from display, a feeling of being into that surrounding would have also been generated. Surround sound, acoustics would be generated. We can have a three-dimensional display which is being created. Objects will have depth also, or a virtual depth is being created with the object, or they are projected in such a way that they can have a virtual depth. So the user would see that it is actually happening in front of me. It gets so immersed with this, right? Or it can also create immersive digital environment, which can also be a device, right? Immersive digital environment, we convert the surrounding completely using displays in such a way that the realistic surrounding is converted into a virtual reality projection itself, right? A large theater which can project the virtual reality. That becomes a digital, that becomes an immersive digital environment also, right? So that immersive digital environment is also created using virtual reality. Different types of the head mount which can be used, which is mostly used with smartphone, or head mount with the PlayStations, etc., or headset with the help of specific smartphones desired for the specific type of projections, or VR headset which can connect to computers. So different headsets, or the virtual reality. It can be said virtual reality can be displayed only through mobile phones or smartphones. No, it can be displayed using three-dimensional displays. It can be displayed using the computer-based simulation, mobile phone-based simulation, web-based simulation. Anything can be generated, and a virtual reality can be created over here, right? So everything remains virtual, but they are being displayed in real. That becomes virtual reality. When we look up to the various applications of virtual reality, the virtual reality has a large-scale application as far as education sector is being considered. In education, virtual reality can be helpful in various ways. Like it helps to create the virtual field trips can be created over here with the help of virtual reality. They would be realistic. We can understand the surrounding. We can understand using various imageries. The trips, or we can say a round trip to a particular area, to a particular location can be created, and the feeling of reality comes out from the way it is being reflected, right? It helps to provide distant learning, right? From the distant places, realistic things or the realistic objects can be displayed, or animation can be displayed, and the overall interaction between the student and the content delivery mechanism would increase. It becomes a much more integrated mechanism of delivery of the content, and far more advanced method of content perception and acceptance by the student also, right? It helps in design, edit, transform, and test the models of virtual environment. We can create various different models which can be created in engineering education, models which can be created in archaeological based applications, models which can be created in medical education, model which can be created in other scientific disciplines also, where realistic models can be created and realistic understanding with the perception of depth can be taken up. So while the gap between the theoretical understanding and the practical understanding of particular subjects or of particular topic can be minimized, or it can be narrowed down. When we learn with the help of more realistic projection of the things, the actual perception of the depth, the actual perception of the different types. Say for example, we are learning the body's anatomy, right? Then the models of the body's anatomy can be created, organs, then covers, skin, etc. All of them, they can be created. So we can help in this way, that a student helps to create a cut, the things open, then lungs come into, then things open, then heart comes into, then things open, then the esophagus comes into, then things are open, then the vertebral column can be seen. So it remains more realistic. In the life size models, we can help to provide the basic theoretical explanation of the things. So the practice and theory comes into more continuum, right? That can also be created. Then it can help in training for various platforms where it can be utilized, right? We can create digital environment and help in training. We have spoken of this: medical training, engineering training, also training for the archaeology, training for the aeronauts, right? Aerospace, etc. Training for we can say aeroplane based training also, or the aerospace training, which we can see. Then the overall training relative to industrial mechanization itself, machines, mechanical engineering based trainings, civil engineering based training, where architectures, the actual architectures, their bend, their problems, their sources, or their we can say the overall load transfer, etc. All of these could remain some of the things which can be implemented over here, or which can help to improvise the method of learning, or the overall perception of learning can also be improvised. That becomes the use in training. Then it can be used in providing special education. It can provide various apps for the learners to get better opportunity for the adequate academic training also, right? There could be special education platforms, the VR based platforms that can be created, right? That can also help in, or the simulation can be created over here. That can also help in providing special education. Also, the education for the students with special needs, students which are differentially abled. Right, students which are differentially able, they can also be provided. Special tools can be generated for different types of the differential ability which is being created. So the perception can also be improvised. Then it can help in medical programs, the medical education, etc. Medical education, training, right? The skill generation, handling different types of the patients, how to handle the patients, how to handle different conditions. That can also be one thing. Then it can also be useful in recruiting, where colleges and universities use the VR for the enrollment process to give prospective students a feel of the campus before they join, right? Much more understanding can be generated relative to a particular campus also, right? So ultimately it will also help in content creation, right? A three-dimensional 360-degree virtual reality content can be created and can be utilized for various utilities, right? Can be generated. So that content creation can also be one aspect of it. So training, round trips, realistic understanding, recruitment, medical fields, skill development also, all of these, they can be certain advantages or the applications of virtual reality in education, and that's how virtual reality can be far more useful for us, right? When we look up to the advantages of virtual reality in education, we can have enhanced visualization, right? With the help of virtual reality, right? We can have improved education quality. The collaborative learning can be made possible, right? Where many users or many teachers can participate in teaching a particular thing using virtual reality, and they can all participate all together. In reality, in the classroom itself, using virtual reality simulations, teachers at remote locations or distant locations, they can help to represent things in a graphical way, and they can be perceived in a particular classroom also, right? Then global outreach can be created. When collaborative learning is being created, a teacher from different location can also be brought into, and simulations can also help in displaying of that environment, and it looks like a realistic classroom environment also. Better student appraisal, right? That is also one aspect of it. Then the simulated academic interest is also one thing. Edutainment is being created, right? Education through entertainment, right? Improvised research is also some of the advantages which are being given. There are certain disadvantages of virtual reality in education also, like it undermines the human interaction. When technology or overuse of technology is being taken up, then obviously the human interaction would be decreased. It lacks flexibility, right? It can represent certain graphical things, but the touch or the haptic communication using simulation. Haptic communication would mean when we can touch certain things. The physical objects are not integrated in virtual reality. That becomes a particular limitation of virtual reality also, right? It causes addiction also. Overuse of virtual reality, of course, would cause an addiction, right? It would be more dependence on such simulations to understand a particular thing. That would become a problematic thing. Then possesses a high expenditure, right? That is also one of the major problems relative to, we can say, the virtual reality. The overall expenditure of establishing a particular classroom, of we can say establishing a complete set of the virtual classroom using or the smart classroom using virtual reality would be far more higher. So the capital cost of investment would also be higher, where the virtual reality would have its own limitations.